Morning, everybody. It's Nick. As you can see, well, I say as you can see it's morning, but actually I look like this for most of the day at the minute. Most days I'm still recovering from an operation on my leg. Actually it's 4 weeks since the operation, and it's hurting just as much now as it was then, but I think a lot of that's the healing process. But not that today's vlog isn't about that at all. It's about the menopause. And just some thoughts that hit me really today. So I think I am finding it increasingly difficult over the last couple of weeks. And I think, you could argue the toss and say, well, is this the menopause, or is this, the fact that I've had an operation, I'm homebound, which actually I quite like a lot of the time, if I'm honest. And it makes me think about, well, why do I like that? So if you look back at our evolution and the biology of being female and what it means to be female, and the menopause, perimenopause, whatever terminology we want to use, but really it's the transitional phase that takes us from being a fertile woman in our, younger years, reproductive, sexually active, etc., etc. Not that I'm saying that going through the menopause means that we don't have to be any of those things, but now at 51 years old, I don't really relish the thought of having any more babies. I've had 3 and that was quite enough. I love them dearly, but it was enough. And if you look back, a lot of the more ancient wisdom that's written about it, because I think there is something really important about the menopause, about understanding not just the modern day solutions to how we're feeling, but also the wisdom that's gone before. That phrase of don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, just because it's old doesn't mean it's wrong. So this is very much a transitional phase where we're going towards the crone phase. And I know lots of people have said to me, I really don't like that terminology, please don't use that word. Honestly, I don't have the energy to get that hung up on it. I mean, you can tell my energy is really flat. My energy is really flat. And sad, because I think this transition into the crone phase, and I do use that word, and I'm happy to use it. If other people aren't happy, please replace it with a word that you are comfortable with. Let's just live and let live, really. But there's lots of different things that happen there. So you're going from, the old-fashioned world of productivity, raising a family, whatever it is that we do with our time. Not everybody has kids, not everybody spends their time, particularly in our modern day, it's a juggling act of 3,050 things, right? But whatever that productivity, however it's used, we have reached the peak of the mountain and we're going into the crone phase, which sees, you've got to the top of the mountain and you've got a different view. You're looking out at a different view. That's the whole point. And I really feel a shift in the view of the world that I have. And it's a shift to this desperate ache for wanting a slower pace, wanting less to do, not more. Really, and I've mentioned this so many times, and it's so prevalent, the sensory overload. So in the mornings, my kids have all left now. I've gone to school, and it is a huge sigh of relief. And it isn't because I don't love them and I don't love being around them. I need space, and I need time, and I need silence, and I need to be able to move at my own pace. I need time to just sit and think and pause and reflect. And I've no doubt this morning, I might cry a bit, because I think there's a grief. There's a grief as we go through life, and we're leaving certain of our phases behind, and we're going into a new phase. And these last couple of weeks I've really felt a lot of grief and reflection about my kids are teenagers now, so those years of parenting young children have been and gone. And there's a lot I got right, but there's a lot I got wrong, because that's the very nature right, of being a parent. Nobody can get it right. There isn't this 100% right way. We're all, a child is born and they haven't been that child before, and you haven't been their parent before. So, of course, how the hell are we meant to know what to do? And this might all sound very rambling, actually, but I know, certainly from feedback I've had from people who do take the time to listen to my mad ramblings, that recognising ourselves in others, and particularly in challenging, difficult phases, can be hugely, hugely comforting, because it makes us understand that we're not alone, and that there isn't something wrong with us in terms of, it's just you that's, something's wrong with you. And it's very, very difficult for other people who aren't going through this phase to really understand. It's the same as loss. I found when my dad died, it was really hard to speak to people who haven't experienced that acute sense of loss of a really close loved one, because of course people are compassionate and loving, but unless you've been through it, it's really difficult to empathise. And that's why I rock up and do these things. It's not some narcissistic thing of, look at me. Well, fucking hell, actually, don't look at me. Look at the state of me this morning. It is the fact that it would be good in amongst these challenges. And I think a lot of people struggle on a daily basis with this mad thing called life. I think it's really, really important for us to find some way to connect, and for when we're feeling a bit down, perhaps something outside of ourselves helps. So I always try and do something for somebody or something else when I'm feeling very low like this, just to remind myself that there is this big, wide, beautiful world out there that sometimes I can only look at because I either don't have the energy or I feel too sad to really engage in. But I think it is a transitional phase. I think there's a lot of grief that goes on. We're grieving for part of our life that's been and gone. It's not coming back. There are things that we've done and said and choices that we've made that we have to learn to find some peace and acceptance with, because they're done. We have what's in front of us, but we can't change what's behind us. And all of that, there's something in the menopause that really brings all of that up. And that is where I think we feel we're getting the mental health challenges. And I know that they are made far more acute and amplified when we have an imbalance in our hormones. I talk a lot about hormonal depression. It's a very, very real thing. It comes and it goes, and it's our hormones are getting out of sync. And for me, particularly when my estrogen drops low, I don't think I'm having hormonal depression at the minute. It's not acute enough for hormonal depression, but my energy is really low. And there is a sadness. I'm carrying a sadness around. And the thing is, a lot of people might say, well, what's the matter? Talk to me, tell me what's the matter. It's difficult, isn't it? It's difficult because I don't always know what the matter is. It's not some tangible thing that can just be fixed. It's just something you need to surrender to. And certainly in the more ancient world and indigenous tribes and so forth, women going through this phase would actually go away for a crone's year. And a crone's year is very much about reflecting on their life and thinking about how they want their life to be going forward. And they generally don't have families still dependent on them. So it's a new phase. Now I'm a classic example of somebody who had kids later. So I've still got kids dependent on me. So I'm, biologically and evolutionary, I'm balancing the fact that my body's going through a menopause, saying, okay, I'm ready. I want to go into the Crohn's phase. And that means, being more liberated, having less demands and dependencies on me. But actually, I live in a modern day world where the way that we organise our society meant I had so many more choices. I was so much more empowered as a woman. So therefore, I was able to have a career, and I didn't have children until later. And sometimes these worlds are just colliding. They're just colliding because our evolutionary progress, it's not in line with the world that we live in. And I think that also makes the menopause far more difficult. And all of these are really nuanced part of the menopause that gets missed. You know, HRT is a big fucking deal, right? It's a big fucking deal for me. But it's not the be-all and end-all. There's a much more holistic picture here that we need to start to understand around the emotional and mental support that we need around the menopause, because all this stuff's going on. And I think the thing that is equally as important as HRT, and this is just coming to me as I'm rambling again without a script and wasn't even really sure what the point was that I was going to make, is having, you know, some quite deep therapeutic and emotional support that goes alongside the medical support. And I think it's really important because so many women I see, myself included, struggle so much at a mental and emotional level during this phase of our life. And the anxiety and rage, I think, is a whole different subject that I won't touch on because I've been going on for far too long now. And I'm not in an I'm always slightly anxious. There's no two ways about it. I'm always worrying about something, but I'm in more of a sad grieving phase, and I think that is about, you know, letting go and realizing that that part of life is gone. And, you know, I think about mortality so much more. Okay, maybe that's because, you know, I'm a soul midwife and I you know, work with people at end of life. So of course that brings my thoughts to mind. I think I've stopped. I think I've said everything I wanted to say, really, which is perhaps just providing a mirror, a reflection for the women who might be feeling like this, and saying that there's so much of the menopause around the mental and emotional side, which is very nuanced. It's very intimate, but it's a sadness and a grief and a reflection, and a need for silence and a need for liberation, really, liberation of demands upon us. And I think that's really, really linked to our evolution. This is biologically, from an evolutionary perspective, where we are, but we live in a modern society that clashes with it. That's the big point. That's the big point. And I think that's what makes menopause really hard at the minute. And we just need to explore it, right? I'm not saying here with loads of answers, but God, we need to explore it, and it needs to be a more holistic approach to how we treat the menopause too. Okay, so I'm going to go because my big aim this morning is to get my stinky ass into the shower. That's what I'm going to go and do, and try not to look quite like this, although I'm sure I should give more of a shit about how I look right now, but I haven't got the energy to do so. So if you haven't, don't worry about it. Okay, lots of love, bye.